It is full on draft season, but I actually want to start with some free agency news because I think that is the biggest story surrounding the Patriots right now. Sure. And that is Stefon Diggs visited New England late last week on a free agency visit. We haven't gotten a chance to talk since. I talked a little bit about this actually a lot about it on Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff if people want to go find that. But I'm in on Stefon Diggs. And that's not to say he's this grand answer to the wide receiver problem. At the start of the offseason, Diggs was not on my list of these are the guys they should be targeting. But I think Diggs is better than adding nobody for where things stand right now. If they had added somehow T. Higgins or DK Metcalf, we're not opening this show right now with Stefon Diggs.
Not even a thought.
Nope, but they haven't added that guy, and I don't think he's a thought for them, but they haven't added that guy. They still have a need at the position, especially for a veteran, for an established player. I get there's the injury concern. I do think the locker room concerns are overblown. It's more the injury thing with me. But all things considered, for what you're probably going to get him for, what they should get him for, and considering how much cap space they have, I'm in. Get Diggs to Foxborough. I'm ready. Do it.
Yeah, like you said it, Barth. As things stand right now.
Right.
They didn't get one of those big names. They didn't trade for Metcalf or T. Higgins, which I think was probably a pipe dream to begin with. But they struck out on Chris Godwin, which that sounds like they made a really hard push for him, but he wanted to stay in Tampa. And so once all those dominoes fell, it's like you're not left with much there on the free agent market for sure. You're left with a veteran who used to be a number one receiver, used to be a great receiver. And I think Stefon Diggs could still be a really good receiver. Don't get me wrong, but now he's on the wrong side of 30, coming off the ACL injury. And like you said, the injury is the number one thing with him because when's he even going to be ready? Is he going to be there for camp at all? You could sort of mirror it with Kendrick Bourne.
Yeah, same timeline.
Kendrick Bourne started really late in camp, and maybe that hurt him throughout the season. Maybe he could have been a more viable receiver if he got a full camp. And so who knows how much you're even going to get out of Stefon Diggs. It's almost like they'd be forced to do a 2-year deal with Diggs if they were to sign him, or it's this year, not a throwaway, but you're kind of only getting half a year out of him. Well, and then you don't really know what he's going to be when he actually comes back. Then that second year might be where you get the full Diggs experience, so to speak. So I think that's sort of the risk here, but they're at a spot where you just need somebody. You need a guy that Drake May can really look at and say, this is an established, reliable guy. And not that he's really looking at Kendrick Bourne or Pop Douglas or even Kayshon Boutte in a negative way, but you really legitimize your offense. As I credited a caller was saying last week, you really legitimize the offense if you bring in a guy like Diggs. So I'm in, even if it's a 2-year deal and it's incentive laden and all that stuff. I think you're at the point you got to bring in someone. You got to give a guy that's sort of to legitimize the whole operation. And so I'd be in on Diggs.
The thing about the 2-year contract, we hear this all the time, right? The guy tears his ACL, comes back, plays a year. It's that next year where he really gets back to form. Now Diggs will be 32 at that point, so who knows? But is he going to sign a 2-year deal? This is the prove it year for him too. I wonder if it's a 2-year deal in air quotes, structured similarly. Now, very different player, very different situation. But if you remember, the Darrelle Revis deal was really a 2-year deal on paper, but it was a 1-year deal that just kind of gave them a little bit of leverage in negotiating the second year.
Yeah.
And it allowed them to distribute the money differently.
Any 2-year deal is a glorified 1-year deal.
Right.
Is the way I look at it.
Anyway. Something like that. But I think for the upside, because he is, like you described, a veteran, polished wide receiver, he's probably not on the field till October. So it's going to be a little bit till Drake May gets to start to work with him. There's also a veteran guy that I think can pick it up quickly and has played with this kind of quarterback before in Josh Allen. So even if he's not on the field till October, one, it gives you some more time to figure out what you're doing with the younger guys, because he's not going to take up a roster spot. He's not going to take up reps in camp. And then when he comes back, you add some juice to that offense. And I think he probably would be. I think it's totally fair, and every injury is different, but I think it's totally fair to use the Kendrick Bourne injury as a timeline. And best I can tell, look, I haven't seen the medical records, but everything that's been written about it that I've seen, as far as ACL tears go, it wasn't bad. You'll see guys ACL, PCL, MCL, meniscus, they're ripping up multiple ligaments and things like that. I haven't seen anything that said Diggs tore anything besides just the ACL. So you think that maybe puts him on a better timeline some point in October, give him a month to get going. It is a prove it year for him, and for whether it be for the Patriots, whether it be for anybody else, but having a guy with that kind of experience in that room, he's still going to be around. And I think you can count on him to be a leader in that room. I don't think he's KJ Osborne where, 2 months into the season, he demands a trade because he's not getting the ball. One, he's going to get the ball. Even if he's 80% of what he was in Houston, he was still pretty good in Houston. Even if he's 80% of what he was in Houston, he's still going to be a good player. And I think that the personality stuff is overblown. Like, yeah, he blows up on the sideline when the team's losing. He's competitive. Wouldn't it suck if they got a player that actually cared deeply about winning games?
I know. Don't we want to win at some point?
Look, as I've said, is he the model teammate? No, probably not. But Larry Fitzgerald isn't walking through that door.
Right.
So at a certain point, you just got to get talent in the room. And I think Diggs represents talent in the room. And you look at who else is left. Amari Cooper, I think is done. Brandon Cooks, I like Brandon Cooks, but at this point, I think his best days are behind him. Keenan Allen maybe is a higher floor option than Diggs, but the ceiling's not nearly as high. Like if Diggs comes in and works, you're number one receiver. I don't know that Allen at this point at 33 years old is getting you to that. I said this before he signed. I was kind of 50-50 on Diggs and Cooper Kupp. So I think this is when they should get done. Now, it's usually not a great sign when the player visits and leaves the building without a contract. We went through this with DeAndre Hopkins 2 years ago. I hope they find a way to get him back in the building. I really do. It just makes so much sense. Even if there is like a little bit of risk attached to it, they can't exactly be picky right now. Right. This is one I'd really like to see them get done.
Yeah. First, just to follow up on the health injury part, Mike Reese in his Sunday notes, I believe the way he put it was that Diggs is ahead of schedule in his ACL recovery. So that's a good sign for him. And, I think he hears from the team perspective. And so the note sort of read like he's almost selling the idea on Diggs coming here. Right. And so like that to me was kind of promising.
Like this is what the team saw when he was in Foxborough.
I'm saying based on what Reese's reporting, which I believe is, good, accurate, like plugged in reporting for sure. Like the team is sort of starting to put it out there. Like trust us. He's ahead of schedule. He's going to be fine. Like, almost like they are going to take the plunge with him, and like they want people to be reassured that he's going to be back and he's going to be fully healthy. He's ahead of schedule and that whole thing.
I'll add real quick. The report was he did undergo a physical when he was in Foxborough. That was part of his visit. So they got a chance to look at where his knee is at with their doctors.
Yeah. And Reese also said, I believe that he's like both sides are sort of taking their time on this. So like Diggs, I mean, I don't know if there been any other reports about him visiting anywhere else. Like, I guess maybe we'll get that today or this week.
Not that I've seen. The closest thing I've seen was, this isn't really a visit, but like at the end of the year, CJ Stroud was campaigning for them to bring Diggs back. So I do wonder if there's interest in him returning to Houston, although how many roster spots, how much money are you going to dedicate to receivers who aren't going to be playing? Because they have Tank Dell too.
Yeah.
And I guess that's not a lot of money. He's on his rookie deal, but that's 2 roster spots at receiver of guys that you're not going to have at least to start the season. In Dell's case, potentially for the whole season. They may say, look, we have 1 injured receiver we got to work through and get there. Like, that's enough for us. We got to get guys in the building that are going to be playing. But that's I wouldn't entirely rule out a return to Houston, especially the longer this thing goes, right? Does he just end up going back?
Sure. Yeah. And so on the character stuff, the locker room stuff, like you and I aren't really, we're not sort of totally in lockstep on it, because I look at his history and it's like, if he was this great, perfect receiver, he might still be with the Vikings. Like, why has he been traded twice? And now, he might go back to Houston, like you said, but now he's been allowed to test free agency. Like, why is that? And CJ Stroud did kind of regress last year, and I don't want to put all that on Stefon Diggs, but like,
no, I was on the offensive line falling apart. I feel comfortable in saying that, among other things. Bobby Slowick didn't adapt.
Okay, that's fair. I'm just saying.
I've gotten the question. I've gotten the question, so I wanted to answer it.
Yeah. But look, I do think it would be overblown here because of his current situation. It's on a prove it deal. He's gonna get the ball. Like, that's not gonna be an issue with him. I just think Diggs is sort of a guy that sort of wears out his welcome. I think he's a guy that he's just sort of a handful. And like, it's a good thing that like he wants to win and he competes and he shows up on Sundays. To me, it's more of like a trade-off than like, oh no, he's a problem, you don't want him in your building.
That's a good way to put it.
He wants to he wants to win. He plays hard and he shows up, but he might get a little intense. He might be a little kind of difficult to deal with in terms of the intensity and the personality and all that. And I think that's where sort of he doesn't really last where he goes. And so would he last more than 1 or 2 years here? I don't know. But if he gets Drake May to another level like you did with Josh Allen and they start winning more games, that's a net positive for the Patriots. Like, yeah, there's a bit of a trade-off. He's not, you might be a bit of a handful at times. But I think for this current situation with this team and where he would be as a player, I think those things would be not as much of a concern as they'd be elsewhere, because he's going to be involved in the offense. He's going to get the ball. And if he's getting the ball, he's probably making plays. They're probably scoring more points. They're probably winning more games. So,
which is,
I think I take that trade-off.
Yeah.
Barth.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not like you're not signing him to a 5-year deal. This isn't the Godwin deal. This isn't the Metcalf deal. You're bringing him in to be a bridge. We're doing wide receivers again next year in the draft and free agency, whatever, top of the draft. We're doing that next year, whether it be, again, in the draft, in free agent, like even if they sign Keenan Allen, if they sign Amari Cooper, if they sign any of these guys that are out there right now, it's still going to be a need next year. So longer term, that's where I'd worry about Diggs. I think wears out his welcome is a great way to put it. I think his welcome can last a year. And that's really all the Patriots need. You just need to give Drake May somebody, so as he continues to get comfortable, he can take that next step and have somebody he feels comfortable doing that with. That can be Stefon Diggs this year and then somebody else next year. But I don't know that there's a guy on the roster right now outside of maybe Hunter Henry, but he's a tight end and he's not necessarily a big play threat. He's more of a chain mover. You need like a big play threat for Drake May right now that he can feel comfortable with. Diggs gets you through that this year, and then next year we can talk about Kendrick Law and Carnell Tate and all those other guys.
Okay, if those guys are real.
Those guys are real.
I always assume you're throwing fake names at me just to see, oh yeah, I like him, and then you're just catching me in a lie.
Those guys are real. They play receiver. So
okay,
there you go.
Good to know. I'll get back to you on that in a year.